It is overtime here at Old Favorite Friday, where we are continuing the conversation about this absolutely incredible beer, Rye on Rye, from Boulevard Brewing. Ralph, one of the things I want to talk about the flavor profile, which is incredible. I want to talk a little bit about the aroma. I want to talk about the fact that this beer has been produced at least since 2010. I believe this beer has been around the block. It is a kind of a staple beer in the smokestack series for Boulevard. But one of the things I just can't get my head wrapped around, or I can get my head wrapped around, but frustrates me, is the fact that this is a rye, a golden tawny colored beer. I guess it's tawny colored. They mentioned that several times in the packaging, but it's a rye beer. It's not a stout, right? It's not an imperial stout, and it's not in a bourbon barrel. And all I ever see in the craft beer industry right now is every single barrel-aged beer is a stout in a bourbon barrel. So why don't we get more of this? Because this is varied, it's more interesting, it's more complex, and it's just different.
Yeah, and so I actually totally agree with that, because whether it comes to even the bread I eat or whiskey or beer, I actually love rye flavor. Mm-hmm. And so this was a beer I can honestly say I've had a few times in little variants they've done. Mm-hmm. And I totally agree, because when it comes to barrel-aged and stouts, it's almost like the low-hanging fruit, easy to pull off. It's like, well, we'll get us out, we'll put it in bourbon, and everyone will love it, and it's fine. But this beer is so much more complex than a lot of those things that I wish we had more rye beers in general. So I totally agree.
And more variation, using different kind of spirit barrels, putting different kinds of beer in them. And I know it's not completely fair. I know that somebody watching this is going to go, oh, my favorite brewery does 27 different barrel-aged beers, and none of them are bourbon barrels, and none of them are stouts. But when I talk to people, especially people opening up breweries, I hear this, what do you do? Well, I make Pilsners, hazy IPAs, and bourbon barrel imperial stouts, right? You hear that so often. It's not that those are bad things. It's just that I like variation, I like complexity, and when you have the whole world of beer, big, bold, beautiful beers, 12% rye beers. We just did a barley wine that we just put into a barrel that has that kind of tawny, little more golden in color, but is going to come out with that kind of color. You get really, really crazy complexity, and you get really interesting beers out of it. I wish more people were doing it. So that was my little rant. I wanted to start that off with. But let's talk about this beer. I'm getting just tons and tons of flavor. I'm getting like this caramel apple on the flavor. I'm getting a little almost strawberry on the nose, which
I could see that.
I'm glad you do, because I thought I was going to sound crazy for saying it. But there's just tons going on here. What else are you picking up?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with the caramel, and for me, not just strawberry, but I was going to say red fruit in general, like a cherry note, but it's very like if you make a kind of like a cherry pie, because I'm also getting some of those baking spices like a cinnamon or even like a nutmeg, and just the way that's layering, because it's almost like, and which makes sense because it's rye, but if you ever have like those dark spiced breads, it's like that, but with this overlay of just dark, ripe red fruit. So again, I can see strawberry, I can see raspberry, I could definitely get cherry. So it's just, all that is working together so well, because nothing's clashing. It's literally just if you were layering a dessert is how this comes off to me.
Yeah, and it's another one of those great beers, and we mention this all the time, but it tastes, when you go back in for another sip, it gives you more, right? Because one thing is not dominating the other. This has, it's 12% ABV. There's some warmness here, but I use the word warm and not hot. When we're talking about barrel-aged beers and high alcohol beers, we use the term hot as being kind of a bad thing. A young beer is kind of hot, or a not well-balanced beer is kind of hot. I get warm in the fact that the alcohol is present, but it's not overwhelming. It's in kind of that nice balance, and it's kind of soothing and comforting. It's like a cozy blanket.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that, because what I was going to say, what I notice about the alcohol is, like you said, is like you get it on the back end as it's going down. So it is that just like, oh, okay, I'm drinking something of some strength. But like a lot of these beers, especially some of the ones we were just saying, why are there so many? It's just so sweet in alcohol that when you go to take a sip, it's just like, all right, that's too much, or like it's boozy and just not a complimentary way. But with this, like the alcohol lends in something I noticed, a really nice body where you're getting this richness, but I could literally go back and back for another sip, and it's not overwhelming in any way.
And you mentioned the sugar content here. It's not through the roof, but it's complementary. Mm-hmm. It kind of heightens the flavor more than dominating it. And you see that so much with under-attenuated stouts, with under-attenuated beers in general. I mean, if we're talking about the U.S. beer market, especially with craft beers that are over 10%, I would say that the vast majority ones I try are extremely under-attenuated.
Oh,
Because it's the American palate. We like sugar, we like salt, we like fat. Well, one of the things we have in beer is sugar. So leave a bunch of residual sugar, and it's going to please a lot of people. Some of those examples of beer, once again, are very, very good. But I like a drinkable beer. And not every beer in this style particularly doesn't need to be bone dry. It doesn't have to finish at 1 Play-Doh or 2 Play-Doh. But it should leave the right amount of sweetness in there so you can go back and drink it.
Yeah, for sure. And I would even go as far as to say, whether you homebrew or if you even work or own a brewery, I would say if you want to make a big barrel-aged beer, I would honestly take this beer or even a couple things that Boulevard does in barrels and try it. Because again, like you said, this is to me, a really well-balanced, almost a perfect balance for trying to make a big beer. You know, you do want something substantial to it, but you're gonna drink more of these. Like, if I could see getting in trouble, because if you didn't know the ABV, you would just sit there and just be enjoying way too many of them.
I've already finished half my glass.
Yeah, and so that's what I love about this, is it is a great, it would be a great standard for like, this is how a barrel-aged big beer should come out.
Well, in Old Favorite Friday, we talk about these classic beers, and we always say they're classic for a reason, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of times, a beer like this I found on the shelf at my local Total Wine & More. I haven't looked at the date. It might be a little bit older. I'm not really sure, right, how long it's been sitting there. But I will say, as well-respected as this beer is, and I'm sure many brewers and people that are watch this video and hear us talking about this would say, yes, I love that beer as well. But there is not the hype around this beer is not probably what it was when it first started, right? So it's a shame that we see these beers that are this high in quality, that really should be standard bearers, are not copied more. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. If I am going to build a barrel program at my brewery, I'm going to grab this and the Bourbon Barrel Quad from Boulevard as a standard, right? Yeah, I'm going to go and find some other great beers for IPAs like Sierra Nevada and find that. And I think we should be doing that more often. Also, there's creativity in there, right? Putting a bourbon barrel quad instead of a bourbon barrel imperial stout, using a rye beer and using a rye barrel. So it's creative. It's really, really good. I hope anyone watching this video can find this beer readily. It's available, because if you haven't had it in a while, it's extremely complex. It's delicious. And you're missing out if you don't revisit a beer like this every now and then. So big ups to our friends over there at Boulevard. Absolutely incredible beer. Do you have anything else you want to mention, Ralph?
No, I think you nailed everything. And just, if anything, I would say whoever wants to make more unique beers like this, I say go for it, because like you said, we need it. And if you can make it well like this, then I'm all about it.
Yeah. Well, guys, please poke around here on our channel, find some other conversations that myself and Ralph are having about great classic beers. We do the quick little video here every single week on Instagram and on Facebook. If you follow us at Barrel Monks on either one of those platforms, you'll get a kind of short 1-minute clip of these conversations, and then we jump over to YouTube and do the longer overtime video. And please tell us what we should be drinking next time. If you have a beer that you love, that you're really passionate about, we want to know about it, because we want to feature it here on Old Favorite Friday in the future. So like us, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.
Cheers.